Hello there and welcome to the Q&A show. My name is Cyrus Fernando and I'm here every Monday evening here to take your questions. Well, for any questions that you might have about the scriptures, the Bible interpretation or creation science, joining us tonight we've got our very special guest all the way from Orlando, Florida. We've got Dr Grady McMurtry. How are we doing, sir?
Good evening. A good hot evening to you.
Good hot evening. What time is it where you are and how is the weather from your end?
Oh, well, we're at 5 p.m. at the moment here, and we've had a nice, good, hot, steamy day. If you want a sauna, all you have to do is move to Florida and open the door.
Yeah, same as Spain, I think, Grady, and even the UK right now. We're all experiencing a heat wave.
It's summer.
So what have you been up to, Grady? You still been doing your talks and spreading the gospel and answering the questions that people are asking? Tell us.
Well, I'm a biblical scientific creationist, so I make, of course, presentations at mostly churches, but being summer, the schools are out right now. I will be speaking at schools in South America, though, in 3 weeks, because down there the schools will be in. It's their, quote, winter. But, I do radio, TV, such as with Revelation, pretty much any venue that's available. I'm willing to share about creation versus evolution scientifically and biblically. And, of course, for sharing the gospel ultimately.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. I want to encourage our viewers. Tonight we are live and interactive like we are every Monday evening. So if you've got any questions for Dr. Grady McMurtry, now is the time to send them in live at revelationtv.com and SMS details are on the screen. Grady, before we start the programme, I want to go with this particular topic. It was quite a controversial topic we saw throughout the whole of the United Kingdom over the weekend. I'd love to get your insights and your thoughts into this as well, please. And it's talking about this. It's saying the BBC reprimanded over Glastonbury Death to IDF Chant. The BBC is facing questions after the musician Bobby Vylan of the punk rap duo Bobby Vylan, who led crowds at the Glastonbury Music Festival in chants of Free, Free Palestine and Death, Death to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. Keir Starmer has said that there is no excuse for the chanting, and the corporation said it showed a warning during its set stream about a very strong and discriminatory language. The Bob Vylan set was shown live on an iPlayer stream, but the footage has since been removed from the BBC streaming service. And it says this: Glastonbury Festival organisers have also said that they were appalled after the frontman rapper Bobby Vylan led the chants of Free, Free Palestine and Death, Death to the IDF. In a statement, Sir Keir Starmer said the BBC had questions to answer over its live broadcast of the group's performance on Saturday. The Equalities Minister, Jacqui Smith, said that while she does not believe the BBC was biased on the war in Gaza, a line has been crossed during its Glastonbury coverage. These were clearly comments that overstepped the mark. I'm surprised that the BBC carried on broadcasting them live when it was obvious that what was happening. I think the BBC has also questions to answer and they've continued to broadcast this for the time they had. Very interesting topic, Grady. It's obviously all over our news story, all our news channels here in the United Kingdom as well. I don't know if you've seen the video at all, but I'd love to get your thoughts and your insights into this, please.
Well, first of all, no, we hadn't really seen coverage of the event. I'm certainly familiar with Glastonbury by reputation. However, this particular fellow, the instant that this started, the producers should have, in just good judgment, cut him off immediately. The fact that they did not shows that they do not have good judgment, that they are, to some degree, complicit. Now, how much complicit, I can't say. I would point out that this also proves to you how easily people are deceived and how easily people are led. Militant Islamics, militant communists, militant socialists, militant environmentalists, they are looking for people that don't think. They're looking for people who will follow. Communists dumb people down to the lowest common denominator so that they won't think. Well, any thinking human would know that those kind of chants, those kind of rhetoric from this guy was a terrible thing. And so I also have to say, as an indictment, both in the UK and in the United States, I want you to know I include us here too. It shows the terrible condition of our education system. that anybody who grows up in these systems is being disserviced by the education system. They're not being educated, they're being indoctrinated. And many teachers, and the success of such things here in the States, for instance, and I would point to our recent primary elections dealing with the mayor of New York, simply show the lack of the teaching of civics, of history. They're not looking for reality. They are writing their own history. They're revisionists, and simply looking for followers and not thinkers.
We see, is this an example of the state of the world that we're living in right now as well, and the propaganda, and how a lot of the young people especially look at something like the Glastonbury Music Festival as well. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of young people were attending. We see the pro-Palestinian flags being waved in the air as well throughout the concert. And when he was chanting this hate speech to a certain extent, he was getting all the support you can imagine from everyone screaming and agreeing with him as well. Yes, he's been cancelled by his management team. Yes, he's been his visa taken away from the US. But this has surely also put him on a pedestal as well. And now he's like the hero for this kind of this march that's going on for the pro-Palestinians right now. What do you think?
Well, again, you have people who are uneducated. If you were to take, and I don't know how many people were there, but let's just simply say there were 3,000 people in the crowd around him, and ask them, what does from the river to the sea mean? They couldn't tell you. They wouldn't know. They don't know that there's no such thing as a nation called Palestine. There never was. That was simply Hadrian's name for Israel. There's so much they don't know. Why? Because they have been so mal-educated, miseducated, uneducated, so indoctrinated by liberals, especially in the case of communists, socialists. And the same thing's happening here. I mean, I lament it as much here as I do there.
Is this the state of the world today, that people, like you say, they're saying all these slogans, but they don't really even know what it means? They're saying death to the IDF and everything else. And we've often seen this. We've seen at the demonstrations and the marches of the Free Palestine marches and such things. They've gone to the TV cameras, have actually gone to students in the march, and they're asking death to the IDF, or from the river to the sea, for example. What does that actually mean? They couldn't even tell you. They don't know the history. They don't even know what they're saying.
That's right. That's they're looking for mindless followers who are looking for something to be a part of. Young people are always looking for something to be a part of. And when you give them a cause, and you can indoctrinate them to simply repeat the chants or whatever that we teach you. I would also point out to you, at least in the United States, many of these people are paid activists, that they don't even believe what they're doing. They're simply doing it for money. But on the camera, it makes it look like they really do support these issues.
Very good. I'd love to get what our viewers think on this. Yeah. Sorry.
George Soros, of course, is paying money right and left for people to do that here in the States. And I would have to think that at least some, if not many, the same in the UK.
Okay, we've got some emails coming in. Thank you to all our viewers. Please do continue to write in live at revelationtv.com. SMS details are also there as well. This one's from Les to say, hi, Cy and Dr. Grady. Can you explain epigenetics?
Well, we don't have enough time for me to do that. However, just to give you an idea, when I was growing up, 50, 60 years ago, genetics was really, so to speak, quite simple. And the idea that one gene controls one function, sort of an idea. Well, today we know that's not true. One gene, it works in conjunction with other genes. But we now know that there's also 3 levels of intelligence in the genetic information. Now, epigenetic is the second level. And so epi meaning higher than, epicenter, the highest part. And so you've got your basic genetic information, 3 billion bits of information in the human genome. And the epigenetic information is actually a string of histones that wrap around the DNA molecule, the chromosomes, and actually open and close to control when these genes are making proteins, when they're not making proteins. And so it's a higher level of intelligence. After all, if you have genes that have to work in combination with other genes, we have a whole bunch of chemical mysteries in there that God's a perfect chemist. But the epigenetic is a control system above the basic genetic storage system. And so the information is not in the genes or in the chromosomes, it's on the chromosomes. But epigenetics is a control system which opens and closes around it, allowing information to go in and out, so to speak, the proteins to be made on demand. After all, think about it. When you've got a set of genes that can produce 5 different proteins, well, you've got to tell them, well, I want this one now, and I want that next, and I want 6 of these, and I want 5 of those. It shows an intelligence way above the most complex storage system in the universe, which is the DNA. And so it just shows how much intelligence there is. There must be a creator God, that this is not a random chance event.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Grady, for that. This one, another question is, how do evolutionists approach the question of abiogenesis, the initial origin of life from non-living matter?
Well, it depends on the evolutionists you ask, of course, but abiogenesis, which is the idea that rocks can become alive by random chance, that minerals floating around in water simply make fortuitous combinations, has been disproven time and time again. Even Stanley Miller, as a graduate student working under Dr. Urey, what's called the Urey-Miller experiments, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that information does not come about by random chance, that random chance contacts of chemicals in the water will never produce, for instance, DNA, which was the first step. And then later Miller tried to do it from the RNA standpoint, and he failed there. And when he died, he admitted he'd found no way that life could have come about by a random chance event.
Thank you, Grady. John's written in, we showed that earlier on about what happened at Glastonbury over the weekend, and John's written in to say, where did all the flags come from? Obviously, it was all pre-planned. Yeah, the images that we showed during that time, you could see there were so many. There were probably over 100,000 people there, Grady, and you can see all the pro-Palestine flags there. Even on the backdrop of the performer, while he was performing, it said Free Palestine. So clearly, he must have been promoting this ahead of time, so it was clearly all pre-planned as well, wasn't it?
Yes, and a lot of money. That's why I said George Soros is doing that here in the U.S. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he's probably involved in the UK too. However, if you were to take a look at those things, first of all, to have, as we have here, pallets of bricks being pre-delivered the day before arrived, when you have all these signs, and I would be willing to bet you that if you could get one of these signs, on the back it would say, printed by so-and-so at such and such an address in London. This is all pre-purchased, pre-planned. These are not spontaneous events whatsoever. And again, they're using what we might used to call at least fellow travelers, empty-headed people that are simply following along with the crowd, trying to be a part of something greater than themselves and don't even know why.
Is this something similar, when we talk about pre-planned, is this something similar to what we saw in the Capitol riots in Washington as well, when they were trying to say
Absolutely.
they were Trump supporters, but it was a very well-organized organization?
It was outside organization going in there, pretending to be Trump supporters and stirring up people, purposely being paid to do that. And when we take a look at the various riots that you see in various American cities today, now whether that's in New York, Seattle, Portland, Denver, when you see that all these materials are being pre-positioned, very clever plans about how to get around security, the pre-printed signs and all those things of that nature, it shows there's a lot of money being spent by the hard left to pay these people to protest. And when they go home, they probably turn on the TV and watch Mr. Trump.
Yeah. Very interesting indeed. Deborah's written in saying common sense is alive. Good evening, Cyrus and Grady. Praise God for some common sense. The foul anti-Semitism at Glastonbury was called out and reported to the police and getting plenty of coverage. The group got hit where it hurts too. A cancelled tour of the USA, hit where it hurts most in their financial pocket, where they worship as lost sheep with no true real God. Hopefully the publicity will help the police use common sense instead of wishy-washy, no action like they do sometimes. I was at the Unison conference last year, chants for From the River to the Sea and calling Israel a genocide country were frightening. Made me wonder what it was like in the 1930s. Many of us complained out, thousands who were there. Our complaints were upheld and the report is not being released. What a cover-up. The police know laws were broken that day, but nothing in terms of prosecution. It cordoned through inaction and in silence. Is this the same evil spirit? Who is it? How should we pray about it? Grady is right. Most people are asleep when they are awake and so very easily led. I thank God I know better and do better. Blessings from Deborah. Any thoughts from Deborah?
Well, Deborah, well, congratulations, Deborah. We are certainly going to agree with you. I would also point out, just as a general comment, when you see anything that is labeled as anti-Semitic, just simply substitute anti-Christian, because anti-Semitism is anti-Christianity as well. It's all part of an anti-Christ movement. It is satanic at its root, and it is evil in its nature.
We've seen the protests that have been taking place in the United Kingdom, Grady, of the pro-Palestinian protests, and then you've seen the pro-Israel protests, how they were both treated in totally different ways. And you can see the Israeli protests were closed down and the pro-Palestinian protests were allowed to go ahead, hundreds of thousands of people marching through the streets of London. And then there was only a handful of Israelis, and yet the police would cordon off and send them away and separate them as well. So clearly there is some sort of agenda in our society today. Are you experiencing that in the US as well?
Oh, we are experiencing it certainly in the U.S., although to a lesser degree. I think under Mr. Trump's leadership in particular, both as 45 and 47, we can see that he is very strongly in support of Christians and Jews. He is not anti-Jewish at all. And I think that many people also forget the deep, rich nature of the Jewish community in the United States. We've had a synagogue here going back 400 years. And so we had a Judeo-Christian foundation, and for the most part have maintained it ever since.
Alan from Bolton has written in to say, I would like to thank Cyrus, Dr. Grady and the Revelation TV viewers for your support and encouragement when I sent a text in 2 weeks ago asking for examples from the Bible where it says we will meet loved ones again in the future. Your kind words will be with me this Thursday when my mother is laid to rest. Thank you all, Alan in Bolton. I remember that program. I remember you, Alan, very well.
Oh, I do too. Yes, and I gave a scripture too, and we had several other members of the Church Without Walls that sent in scriptures, but there's many others too. And
beautiful.
We just want to be some solace to you in your grief, but know that you will see your mother again.
Yeah, thank you so much for writing in, Alan. Our hearts are with you, our love is with you, and our thoughts are with you as well. Grady, for any of our viewers who missed that programme 2 weeks ago, Alan obviously lost his mother then. He wanted some comfort. What can we tell our viewers tonight who have maybe lost a loved one recently?
Well, again, one of the scriptures that I mentioned was King David's, the loss of a baby. And he says that the baby cannot return to him, but that he will see him in the future. And there are many, many scriptures where Jesus talks about that we would be reunited with him and with other loved ones in heaven after death. That to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. To be present with the Lord is to be in heaven with all the other believers who have died in the past.
What responsibility do we as Christians have, Grady, to really evangelize and get the words and the spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to any of the non-believers? What is the consequence of our loved ones not knowing Jesus Christ?
Well, I'd like to put it in the negative, if I may, for just a moment, Cyrus. How much do you have to hate somebody that you don't want them to go to heaven.
Very true.
You see, by not sharing and taking it from the negative here, by not sharing, you are preventing them from the benefit of going to heaven. So why wouldn't you want to share that with them? I mean, even your worst enemy is still a human being, and so they can change. Everybody can change. You know, things are a chosen thing. They are not predetermined. That you can be a terrible person, even a murderer. After all, King David was a murderer, and yet I feel absolutely confident that he went to heaven and that Jesus sits upon his throne of his father David. And so you have to believe that a man or woman can change regardless of how bad they are currently. And that until death, there is always that possibility of repentance and acceptance of salvation to the work of Christ.
Well said. Thank you so much, Grady. Appreciate that. Grady, from your perspective, what is the latest coming out from Israel? Obviously, there's multiple wars going on at the moment as well. What is the latest from your perspective with Israel and Iran? Tell us.
Well, first of all, there will never be genuine peace, but there can be a constructed peace. The reason I say that is that will always be religious war because it's religious. It's not a secular negotiation. And when you have people that are adamantly indoctrinated in a very militant death cult religion, you are never going to be able to get them to stop it. You know, as I point out, you can never defeat a fundamentalist, whether they're a Christian or a Hindu or whatever. If they are fundamentalists, they will not change, because if they're not willing to learn, they'll never be willing to change. And when you have a religion that says that you can lie to support the religion, you're not going to get honest dealing. What we can do, though, is we can get a negotiated secular form of peace. And right now, that's looking better. I'm not going to predict it. I'm not a prophet. But the fact of the matter is that at the moment, both with Hamas and also with Iran, Israel is making great strides towards a secular form of peace.
Tell us from your perspective. Obviously, you're an American and you're a pro-Trump supporter as well. When Trump came out and said, obviously, we've come to some sort of agreement for a ceasefire and peace between Israel and Iran, and everyone was hoping that was amazing news. And then Iran came out as well and said, no, that isn't actually right. What do you see? How did you see that from your perspective?
Well, again, I go back to Mr. Trump is perhaps the single greatest negotiator in world history. I know there have been others, and there's some very good ones in the past I can think of. But the fact of the matter is, it's all part of his negotiation technique. You know, once he got them to stop fighting, even for 12 hours, so to speak, he could say, well, now we can have, this peace accord. And he certainly wants them all to sign on to the Abraham declarations, which I would too, first of all. Peace and prosperity is good for all cultures, whether they are religiously correct or not. It benefits everybody. And so, you know, I know that the Iranian people, 80% of them, do not support this war at all. But they are being suppressed. They are being manipulated and controlled at the threat of death. And we know that there have been many, many people who have died since in Iran at the hands of the Iranian government, simply being charged as, oh, you're a spy for Israel, you're a spy for the U.S., you're a spy for the U.K. And there are people who are dying, and some of them were not spies. They're just being picked up and hung to keep the others suppressed.
We've actually got right now a film series that's currently being recorded by International Media Ministry in our studios here in Spain as well. They're recording a film series on Esther. and it just talks about God's timing as well. This film series was due to take place probably 2 years ago. It's then delayed till a year ago, and now it's taking place right now, literally as everything is going on between Israel and Iran. And a lot of the actors who are on the set, they're all from Iran. They've actually had to return home because of what is going on. And the ones that have stayed, they're very, very emotional. I've had the opportunity of speaking to a lot of them as well. It's tragic what is going on in their own country. They're heartbroken. Their families are there as well. They're torn apart and everything. Tell us about Iran and from a Christian biblical perspective, and also Esther. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, I mentioned this before on previous programs as well as tonight. People forget the history of Iran, of the Persian Empire, that we know going back to the time of the Babylonian captivity. So when Nebuchadnezzar took the nation of Israel into Babylonian captivity, that was in God's actual design, because God was using Babylon to preserve Israel. Otherwise, it would have been crushed by Egypt. But after only 4 kings, what happens? Well, Cyrus the Great, or Darius, actually releases the Jews to go back to Israel if they wanted to, and only 10% went back, give or take a percent. And not only that, he sent back almost all of the instruments that had been taken out of the first temple. A phenomenal thing in history, absolutely unheard of, and to my best of my knowledge, never repeated again. But what happened is that the 90% of the Jews who stayed then became a part of Persia, and that the story of Esther is the story of the Jews, and the Jews being preserved against the Haman and his wanting and his desire to commit genocide of the Jews. And so since the time of really Babylon, but certainly of Esther, there have been many, many people in Persia, we call it Iran today, that are Jewish, married Jews, have members of their family that are Jewish, Christians. And even in Israel, there's a lot of support by many people in Iran for Israel, and even in support of the bombing of Iran, even though they themselves may suffer from it.
Yeah.
And I just think people forget the story of Persia or Iran is not the same thing as the story of the Gaza Strip at all. And that many people support Israel from Iran, but they have this absolutely tyrannical, fanatically lunatic fringe that is suppressing them and doing everything they can to bring about a total apocalypse.
I was going to ask you, Grady, we often hear about the Iran regime. Tell us about the Iran regime. What are people in Iran suffering from? Tell us.
Well, the fact of the matter is, in one sense of the word, we can take a look at this from a secular standpoint. What happened to Germany during World War II? Hitler took all the money for the war effort. Well, in one sense of the word, the same thing is happening in Iran. The inflation rate is huge. The people don't have enough money to survive. The money that Iran can make, which is mostly out of their petroleum products, is what's holding them up. And I have to confess that on international television, we've had presidents of the United States who have helped Iran by giving them bazillions of dollars. Barack Obama, Joseph Biden gave them billions of dollars. And what did they do with it? They bought missiles and rockets and a nuclear program and so forth. And I think America needs to repent from that. I know I do.
Thank you so much, Grady. Very, very interesting indeed. This next one here is from Nicole in Hove. Thank you, Nicole, for writing in. Say, hi, I love your program. In order of creation, I find Genesis chapter 1 and 2, verse 19, slightly confusing. Could you please clarify? Also, I was asked if my faith should be shaken if some life form was found somewhere else in the universe. Of course, it would not. But what would be a good answer? Many blessings. That's from Nicole in Hove.
Well, that's 2 very different questions, but let me try to address the Genesis 1, 2 first. People misunderstand how the scriptures are written, especially in the first chapters of Genesis. And they think that there's a second creation in chapter 2. That's not correct. What you have is in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to the second or middle part of Genesis 2:4, a skeletal outline. It's like the abstract in a technical paper. And then starting with the second half of verse 2:4, you start filling in the details of things that happened during the creation week. So that while you have Adam and Eve, you have the naming of the animals, you have the first marriage. Those things actually occurred during the days of creation, so that Adam, Eve were created on day 6, as is recorded in Genesis chapter 1. God made them male and female. But in Genesis chapter 2, you have the details of how Adam was literally assembled from the dust of the earth, that his body was then inanimate, it was made alive, that God then took the living material from Adam's body and also then made Eve and all these things. People don't realize that the Bible is not chronological there, that you have the abstract in Genesis chapter 1 to the beginning of chapter 2, and then you have the details being filled in, but that those details occur basically on day 6. So once you understand that, that should be very helpful. Now, in terms of living things, I'll say, first of all, any place else in the universe, this is the only place where humans exist. This is the only place where anything made in the image of God exists. And if you go to Psalm 115, you'll find that God has given the earth for the sons of man, but that the rest of it is his. The Bible tells us he can decorate it for his own good pleasure any way he wishes to. There is nothing that would preclude there being plants or animals on other planets someplace else. Now, we have never found them. I want to make that stipulation. But we have found over 5,000 planets outside of our solar system. Most of them are too big, or they're gas giants, or they're hard rock, but they're too close or too far away from their stars. They don't support life. But there's nothing human, nothing like us, nothing that could experience sin and salvation anyplace else except on the earth. The Bible precludes that. But that there could be plants or animals on other planets, should God choose to put them there, there's nothing in the Bible that would preclude it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grady. Very good indeed. And then the second, did you answer the second part of the question, Grady?
I believe that was the second part.
Excellent.
Dealing with living organisms.
Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Give me 1 second, Grady.
Time's up.
Okay. While I'm trying to get my emails back, Grady, you talked earlier.
I know.
Well, you talked earlier about Iran and Israel. From your perspective, what is the latest on Israel and Hamas?
Well, again, there seems to be a possible tentative peace agreement. Israel has so decimated Hamas, as they did with Hezbollah, that Hamas is realizing that if they don't capitulate, that they will be fully annihilated. And Israel's done a really good job of that. So I think that, again, a secular form of peace, it may well be achievable, and soon, within a week or two. But that still remains to be fulfilled.
This one here is from Jeremy, and Jeremy's written to say, "Hi, Dr. Grady and Cyrus. We are nearing the centenary anniversary of the US Scopes trial, made famous by the film Inherit the Wind. It's an appropriate opportunity to discuss why so many supposed scientists are deceived into believing in something without evidence. Are they mad, full of hatred of God, or simply deceived by their hubris?" And that is from Jeremy.
Well, Jeremy, I would suggest to anybody listening that they go to my website, go to my articles page, which all the articles are free. There's over 100 there. And I have an article on the movie based upon the Broadway play, Inherit the Wind, showing that it is a totally fictionalized view of what happened at the trial. That the real history of the trial is quite different. However, what happened was that the state of Tennessee had a law saying that only creation could be taught. It was challenged by the ACLU and their lawyer, Clarence Darrow, who was a card-carrying communist. And in the trial, Darrow actually lost because he said, by throwing in the hat, so to speak, that he would win it on appeal, and that's exactly what did happen historically. But the whole play and the movie are centered around Christians and creationists being absolutely insane. Not true at all. Unfortunately for the creationists, William Jennings Bryan was the attorney for the creationists, and he was not a believer in a young creation. He was a Christian, but he believed in an old earth. And so when you are a Christian, a theistic evolutionist who accepts an old earth, you really don't have much authority or tools to try to counter somebody who also believes in an old earth. And it makes it seem like you agree with them. There's a lot of things that could be said about that trial. But again, supposedly the Christians won, but they lost on appeal through a very bad judgment. And I would point out that later Clarence Darrow, the ACLU lawyer, was arrested and convicted for jury tampering. You might want to know a little bit about his history too.
Grady, you often go into colleges and universities to do speeches. You speak to a lot of students. What is the state of the schools, the elementary schools, especially for the younger children? What are they learning at the moment in the US from a biblical perspective? Is God very still forefront in the American education system?
No, and that's again the big problem. I also always try to say the UK and the US, we are both suffering from the same thing, which is an atrocious education system. Our education system is run by unions. Now, I'm not attacking a particular union. I'm not attacking a particular member. What I am saying is that ideologically, unions are socialists, and therefore they do not believe in God, and they are simply trying to be greedy. They are exercising the Adamic nature of human beings. And because of that, let's say that this person might be a homosexual, another person might be a pedophile, another person might simply want to steal what you have. And what happens in the schools is they are educating the children that this is okay in order to support the lifestyle that they want to live. And so when you have that kind of an education system being run by unions, again, which are anti-God at their very foundation, you're going to get very poor education. And unfortunately, here in the United States, in the states legally, they have decided they're going to teach evolution only. However, this is contrary to the U.S. Constitution, where we are not supposed to be teaching any particular religion in our schools. But evolution is a religion called secular humanism. And so we're taking American tax dollars to teach a specific religion, which is secular humanism, to our students. And it is an anti-God, anti-Christ religion. And so we are reaping what we're sowing. If you will read Romans chapter 1, starting at verse 16, Paul was dealing with the same thing 2,000 years ago. And he said, when you teach your children evolution only, then these are the consequences. And so when you start at verse 26 and on to the end of the chapter, Paul gives you a list, a litany of what happens when you teach only evolution to your children. And if you take a look at it, that describes perfectly the society we're living in today.
Where do things need to change? I mean, obviously it would have to change from the government perspective as well. What is the likelihood of things changing now that Trump is in power?
Well, the good thing is that he certainly is pro-Christian, and he did a lot of good pro-Christian things during his first term. He's continuing them in his second term. I will point out that the little bit of bright light that does exist, first of all, our homeschool movement tends to be Christian and tends to be young earth creationists. But even in the secular realm, we have certain kinds of schools like called charter schools and other types of religious schools that can still teach. When I gave the indictment about unions and so forth, I'm talking about in the government-run schools. So we see some bright lights. Now, unfortunately, there was just a Supreme Court ruling. Mr. Trump has been very successful because our Supreme Court justices have gone back to a more noteworthy interpretation of the Constitution. But there was recently a unfortunate decision of a case coming out of the state of Oklahoma. And in that, it kind of was quashing, unfortunately, some of the bright light here. But we are getting more and more schools where the parents are involved. This particular law struck down some alternative time, but not all of it, as it's called. But we do see schools that, while they cannot teach creation, they cannot teach the Bible, and I wouldn't want them to teach the Bible religiously, but they are trying to teach it historically, which is a good thing. They are allowing alternative time where students can actually get out of, and this is a case that was just decided out of Maryland, that students do not have to be indoctrinated by the public schools if what they're teaching is contrary to the parents' religion. That's a good thing. So we see the bright light in Maryland, even though we saw an unfortunate decision in Oklahoma. And so people can stand up and they can make changes to the education system. They can get involved. And what we need really are more Christians involved with government-run schools, holding them more accountable. After all, to teach only one side of an issue is intellectual bigotry. And that's what's happening in our public schools. It's in your public schools. They're being taught one side of an issue. But good education requires that you're taught both sides with equal emphasis, and then the student is allowed to decide for themselves which one they will believe in something that requires a faith.
In the US schools, when you have religious studies, is that just teaching about Christianity, or is that also teaching about the other faiths as well?
Well, unfortunately, of course, that goes under comparative religions. So they'll spend a week on Islam, they'll spend a week on Hindu, they'll spend a week on Christianity, kind of thing. So they're teaching about all of them. The unfortunate thing there is that it simply causes confusion, because they will never say which one's right, or that even the student is allowed to decide which one is right. They just have to learn about all of them. And that does cause confusion, because there can only be one correct religion.
Absolutely right. This email is from Deborah. Thank you, Deborah, for writing in, saying, God bless Alan, who lost his mum. The work changes when you lose your mum. Love never dies, Alan. My mum died in 2018. She has moved on, and I know I will see her again. I only lost my mum from my earthly future. I cannot lose her love from me and all those memories of her. Eternity is a long time. Rejoice and look up. Hope the day goes well as it can be. Let go and let God. That's from Deborah. Beautiful message. That's so kind of you, Deborah. Thank you so much. And Alan, I hope you're still listening, and I hope that's reached you as well. We continue to send you all our love and thoughts and prayers as well for your mum, saying goodbye to your mum tomorrow as well, Alan. This one as well, Grady, from Miriam in West Wales. Evening, Cyrus. Could you please ask Dr. Grady why Genesis 10, 3-5 clearly states that Ashkenazis are Gentiles, and then Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 warn us again that the modern day Jew are not who they say they are? That's from Miriam in South Wales.
Well, Miriam, maybe I can help a little bit. In Genesis chapter 10, you have the table of nations. These are the 70 nations that were created by the giving of 70 languages, or the giving of 69 and leaving one, which would be Hebrew. But when the people were given the languages, God told them originally to spread out. They refused to do so. They stayed in one place in rebellion. God says, if you're not going to do it my way, you're going to do it my way. Here, take 70 languages and see how you like it. And that caused them to then disperse. Now, Ashkenazi, that's the group that are not Semitic, they're Japhetic. But they are the ones who went to what became northern Germany. And that's why the people from northern Germany are called Ashkenazi. Now, over the years, many, many Jews migrated to Germany, as you know. And again, we could talk about the Holocaust and World War I, World War II. But when Jews from the areas of Northern Europe returned to Israel, making Aliyah, the return to the land of Israel, they are then called the Ashkenazi because they're coming from that area that was traditionally and originally called Ashkenaz.
This one here is written in to say, good evening. Genesis says the sun was created after the earth, but we know the sun is older than the earth. Is it a mistake in the Bible? Why didn't God say the actual order?
Well, first of all, if you take an evolutionary worldview, you would be correct. But if you take a creation worldview, you are wrong. God created the earth first. The earth is 3 days older than the rest of the universe. The sun, moon, and stars are not created until day 4. Now, on days 1, 2, and 3, there was light. Remember Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, 2, 3. On day 1, in verse 3, God created light after the earth was created, and it was in darkness. After he starts it rotating in darkness, and then he creates light. He doesn't need the sun, the moon, the stars to produce light or to reflect light. And the light that he created, because he can simply speak light into existence, was traveling in one direction, so that there was one period of darkness, one period of light, one rotation, one day. And that's the first 3 days. On day 4, God replaces the light that he simply spoke into existence with the sun, and the earth continues to rotate, and the rest of the universe comes into existence. So I'm sorry, but you've got it wrong chronologically.
Hi to you both. Revelation 20 verse 9 says, they marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. Is this possible that this fire is nuclear bombs?
Well, first of all, as we have stated, I don't deal with Revelation. I don't deal with end times. But when you read that, I doubt seriously that it's nuclear bombs. It could be fire and brimstone. But whatever it was, or simply the word of God creating fire that destroys them, they were destroyed. They will be destroyed because they are anti-God.
Can you please tell me if the storm that Jesus rebuked in Luke 8 was demonic?
Oh, by no means. This is this kind of storm activity that occurs in the Lake of Galilee and has occurred on the Lake of Galilee for over 4,000 years. There is a cleft in Mount Arbel, and as the winds from the Mediterranean come up over the Judean hills towards the north end of the Sea of Galilee, those winds dip down through that cleft, and that cleft then hitting the water stirs the waters. And the same thing happens today, and it has happened for at least 4,000 years, maybe slightly more. And so this was a natural event, and Jesus, being creator God, Colossians 1:16, simply took his authority and told the wind to stop. And as soon as the wind stopped, the storm stopped. It's a totally natural event that occurs often.
This one's saying, do you think that the Ayatollah is now a dead man walking and the regime change will happen in Iran? Do you think the son of Shah of Iran will be invited back or put back into the position by the USA? Do you think God will intervene for Israel?
Well, first of all, God will intervene for Israel, period. That's a separate statement.
Good.
As far as
Ayatollah.
Khamenei is concerned,
Yeah.
yeah, as far
Is
as he's concerned,
Ayatollah, is he a dead man walking?
well, he is a dead man walking because he's not a Christian. Yeah, all non-Christians are dead men, dead women walking, and he's 86. Let's face it, he's not going to live much longer in the natural world, regardless of what world events are.
Do you think there will be a regime change in Iran?
I certainly hope that there will be. I don't want us to be kingmakers. I don't want us to be involved with regime change there. But what is needed in Iran, and the problem that they have, the 80% of the people who do not want this tyrannical government, this extremism that is literally killing them, starving them, taking their wealth and property, taking their very lives. They don't want it. But until they rise up and have and I'm not trying to stir up rebellion, but until they have a revolution, which I wish would be peaceful, but nonetheless, until there is a body of people there who will rise up and take away this demonic regime, they're going to continue to suffer. And this is true throughout history of any country that is put in a similar spot. We've been mentioning Iran. We've been mentioning Esther. Think about it for a second. The quote, the law of the Medes and Persians cannot be broken. So once Haman got the king to put out a decree that the Jews were to die, and then he in his own hand picked a month that ended up being 11 months away, allowed the Jews to then be armed by the king and the queen because they realized their mistake, and they said, okay, well, we're going to have another law that says you can defend yourself. And then what happens? When Haman's plan comes to fruition, the people prevent it from happening.
And finally, do you think the son of the Shah of Iran will be invited back or put into position by the USA?
Well, first of all, again, I hope we are not involved with the regime change itself.
Yeah.
And secondly, I remember the Shah. When I was getting my master's degree, I knew a guy who was in the Shah's Air Force. Pilot was a student with me in graduate school. I found them to be very nice people, generally speaking. But I doubt very seriously that the Crown Prince will come back and be the head of state again. Of course, he could be. I'm not a prophet. I don't know that. But I just don't want the U.S. to be the ones to do it. I want the Iranian people to be the ones who do it.
Okay, this next one here is written in, say, with regard to the 7-year peace treaty with Israel orchestrated by the Antichrist, do you have any views on what it may include to appease Israel into the agreement? Do you feel as a widely considered two-state solution to be the only feasible option?
Okay, again, I'm going to hand this back to Cyrus. I am not answering end-time questions.
Okay, let's move on. Let's get some more in before we finish. If God created everything, where did evil come from? That's from Mags.
Well, first of all, the Bible tells us that God is not the author of evil. But you have to remember what evil is. Evil is not something you can reach out and touch. Evil is actually a yardstick. We've talked about this in the program, though it's been probably last year sometime. Evil is simply not doing things God's way. And the more evil something is, the farther it is from the way God would do it. So that evil is it's a meter stick, a yardstick, as a measurement of how far away something is from doing it God's way, because only God's opinion is the right thing to do. But humans have an Adamic nature. They have a sinful Adamic nature. And so we will automatically do the wrong. Babies start sinning at about the age of 5 or 6 months. And so we do it quite naturally. We don't have to be taught how to do it. But the more evil you are, the further you are from doing it God's way, the more evil things become. But it's a measuring stick. It's not something you can touch.
Well, continuing from that one, Grady, the question is, we know we have a loving God, but why did he allow Satan to torment Job? We know that he had his life restored, but he must have endured such emotional pain.
Well, first of all, the story of Job is very much misunderstood by most people. The story of Job is actually the second greatest book on creation in the entire Bible, behind Genesis. The story of Job's, quote, suffering, unquote, was to show what not a perfect human being, because Job was not perfect. He had a sin that was obvious to anybody. It was the sin of self-righteousness. But it was to show what a perfect believer, meaning that his faith was absolute, that even if he kills me, yet will I believe in him. And so the things that go on with Job were to teach the modern scientific method in the first 3 chapters of Job. It was to show what somebody totally committed to God, even though they are not perfect. He was mature. is capable of doing and enduring. And God allows Satan to do bad things to good people to make us stronger, because if we don't have something to resist against, we will get weak. And so my question when I teach on the feasts of the Old Testament, for example, is if God never did anything for you tangibly again, he never blessed you physically, never helped you with your bank account, could you still look him in the eye and say that what you've done by providing my salvation and that I will go to heaven is enough? And so it shows in Job that a mature believer can endure all these things. Job is never punished by God. God never does it for punishment. He does it as an example of what a mature believer can do.
Thank you, Grady. Very quickly before we finish, Rocky, love your name, by the way, Rocky. He's written to say, we human beings are like God's little babies, and the demons and the devil are like his crazy pit bulls, and he's stopping them from attacking us. That's from Rocky. I love that perspective. Well done, Rocky. Grady, before we finish today's programme, let's give a message of hope to our dear viewers who are watching us today. Maybe they're going through some difficult times in their life. What message of hope can you give to them today?
Well, again, there are many, many difficulties in the world today, whether you're suffering personally from them or whether they're simply political, situational. The one thing we do know, that God is always in control, that he will never put more on us than we can endure, that he loves us and that Jesus died for our salvation, and that it is our belief in that that gives us an eternal hope.
Amen to that. I want to say, Dr. Grady McMurtry, you've got your website there as well, creationworldview.org. Grady, what have you got? What content have you got on your website?
We have over 100 free articles, almost all of them at a popular level. We have over 400, near 450 short free videos on a wide variety of subjects. And we also have a bookstore. And many of those items are available electronically so that you don't have to pay for the postage to get them.
Amazing. We always talk about where can we get reliable sources of information, and Dr. Grady's website, Creation Worldview. There's so much free information there, and I encourage our viewers, check out the website, read the articles and all the vlogs and everything else that Grady's working so hard. Grady, thank you so much for joining us as always. We love you very much. Love to Nancy as well. Take care. God bless. We see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all our viewers. Thank you for your interaction this evening as well. Q&A show is here live every Monday at 10 p.m. UK time. Don't forget, we've got a video on demand on our website, revelationtv.com/videos. We're also on social media, on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube as well. All our programs are there available. No matter what's going on in your life, I pray in Jesus' mighty name that God will connect with you even closer than he is right now. You'll gain your strength, your faith and everything for your life, for your family's life, and everyone, I pray in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Take care. God bless. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.